Hope for Sanjeevana 2 months early are heard in Vrindavan Holy Car Casualty Nithiki Sarais Ordeal July 2008 Care for Cows in Vrindavan Care for Cows in Vrindavan CFC Trustees Vraja Mohan Dasa Hayavalabha Dasa Amit Dhulani Rakesh Rahira Patrons Radha Jivan Dasa Suresh Vajiani CFC Staff Kurmarupa Dasa Sri Nirmal Dasa Braja Gopal Dasa, Switzerland, Laxmi Rupa Dasi, Denmark, Isani Devi Dasi, Holland, Dr. J.P. Lavanya Satyadeva Singh Radha Karan Dasa Krishnamai I Dasi Syam Hari Vijay, Ramu, Ramakisan, Mithan Newsletter Editor Kurmarupa Dasa Care for Cows in Vrindavana is inspired by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada founder Acharya International Society for Krishna. Dear friends, this month was marked by unusual weather patterns. The hot dry summer began but ended abruptly by a frightening and violent windstorm followed by stinging rain. Homes of the poor were ruined and their meager belongings drenched. Important crops were damaged and many trees snapped, leaving ugly stumps to survey the destruction. Then the monsoon intruded unexpectedly, paralyzing traffic and flooding many homes. More winds blew and signs flew dangerously like frisbees while billboards were shredded or bent. When people met in public, the talk centered around the hardships nature was dealing and losses they suffered in their respective businesses. It was sobering, but we all tried to dismiss the nagging suspicion that Mother Nature was angry at us. While the humans suffered, the street cows danced joyously, waving the tufts of their tails in the wind. They became brightened and polished by the rain and enjoyed feasting on a buffet of leaves of all variety. As the empty fields and roadsides sprouted fresh grasses, they grazed almost as delightfully as in times past. Mother Nature punishes us but blesses them. Could it be that those who live in harmony with her are blessed, while those who insist on living in contrast are doomed? I think so. Will we heed the warning? Jaya Sri Guru. Jaya Sri Gopala. Jaya Sri Gomata. The CFC's TAF-CA-REFORCOWS.org Care for Cows in Vrindavan is a charitable trust registered in India, USA, Holland, and Switzerland. Hope for Sanjeevana being consoled by her bull calf Jiva. Sanjeevani and her infant bull calf were taken to the Mathura Veterinary College Hospital by their owner after her front leg had been crushed in an accident. The veterinarian decided her leg had to be amputated, and since her owner could not afford to purchase the medical supplies required for the post-operative care, he never returned to retrieve her. Dr. R.P. Pandey requested Care for Cows to host her, and she has been with us since December 2006. It took her stump several months to heal, but she learned to walk by hopping step by step. Before each step, she reaches her stump out as if she still has her leg, but when it fails to offer support, she hops. We are now working on building a prosthetic limb with the hope she will learn to use it and thus prevent her spine from gradually becoming deformed by the twisting that occurs from standing on 3 legs. The artificial limb is made of welded steel rods fashioned by a local craftsman/blacksmith/mechanic and then wrapped in cotton webbing. A carpet-like cotton boot fits around her stump to protect her from chafing, and a canvas halter reaches around her torso to keep the limb in place. The sample shown here does not fit snugly enough and will have to be modified before we begin training her how to use it. So far she is being quite cooperative. Sanjeevana, after being fitted with the first version of a prosthetic limb still in progress. During April and May the wheat and barley fields are filled with villagers, to include toothless grandmothers and 8-year-olds, collectively cutting the stalks and thrashing them to get the grains. Once the grains are removed, the stalks are stacked in the field and then pulverized to serve as the main staple for the cows during the rest of the year. Sometimes the golden mounds of thrashed stalks, busa, lay in the fields before being stored in straw silos or transported to the goshalas. This year, while the bulk of the busa lay in the fields, the most violent windstorm in 25 years scattered the harvest in all directions, reducing the golden dunes to mounds 1/2 or 1/4 their original size. We approached an old farmer standing next to his diminished mound who was anxious to sell it before the next windstorm appeared. After the standard back and forth, we reached an agreement that the busa was worth Rs.25,000 and promised life in Vrindavana, a constant battle of wits. Chopped wheat stalks, busa, the old farmer to pay him that amount upon delivery the next morning. The agreement was made in the afternoon, and that evening an angry wind again blew and perhaps 30% of the Busa was carried off. In the morning we met at the dune, which was visibly reduced. The farmer said that he was sorry that our Busa had been carried off by the wind. We responded that it was not ours but his. He argued that we had made an agreement and that oral contracts are binding, and that if we did not pay the amount agreed upon he threatened to take action. Finally we said, TK. We accept that the Busa was ours and we have to bear the loss caused by the wind. But you should know that last night when I was en route to pay you the Rs.25,000 the wind blew so furiously it carried off some of your notes. Since by your logic, it was our Busa that the wind carried away, you have to agree that it was some of your rupees that were carried off. Are heard in Vrindavan Suresh Vagiani and his wife Ina brush cows basking in the Vrindavan winter sun by Suresh Vagiani after finishing my degree at City University, UK. In 1998 I landed a job as a trainee actuary. However, before starting to work I made a pilgrimage to India to see all the places I had heard so much about, namely, Mayapur, Jagannath Puri, Dwarka and Vrindavan. Since I was starting a new job I had decided to donate my first month's salary to some noble cause, so while traveling I was on the lookout for worthy projects. Unfortunately, everywhere I went I mostly encountered money-hungry sadhus and institutions. Back in the UK I had made acquaintance with several Gurukulas and was impressed with their ability to penetrate the surface of things, to see beyond appearances. They were streetwise and able to see things from the inside out. Not being concerned about protecting their social image or material wealth, I found many of them suitable to take advice from in the matter of finding a worthy recipient to hand over my valuable first month's salary. During my visit to Vrindavan my inquiries led me to Kurmarupa Dasa, a former Gurukula teacher who the students trusted and confided in. I was informed by a Nepali Gurukuli named Arjuna that he was taking care of abandoned cows, and I was curious to meet him. Upon arrival we saw Kurmarupa feeding a 4-day-old orphaned bull calf with a baby bottle. He told us that his mother died shortly after giving birth and that he was purchasing milk to keep the baby bull alive. It was obvious that the calf thought Kurmarupa to be his mother, as he followed him all around punching him with his nose, trying to inspire him to give more milk. Somehow, I was convinced Krishna wanted me to offer my first month's salary here, as Care for Cows was just blossoming with their first 5 residents. Being a Gujarati I felt the need to confirm my intuition, so I double-checked by inquiring from other sources regarding Kurmarupa's reputation and was informed that my donation would be wisely put to use at Care for Cows. I was told I could send my donation for Care for Cows through Vrindavan Food for Life, which is a registered charity in England. Later, I discovered that the bank I worked for passed on donations without deducting taxes. Not only that, but the bank Baba drinking milk from a bottle actually tripled monthly donations to UK-based charities. It seemed to me that Krishna made a better plan than we could have imagined and arranged for my donation to be paid in full and then tripled. Later I learned that my first month's salary was used to build Care for Cows' first shed to host 25 abandoned cows, and I felt fortunate. Consequently, as I moved to another job I followed the same procedure of donating my first month's salary to Care for Cows. I am convinced that cow protection is a valuable and worthwhile service, and I feel connected to Vrindavan even though I was stuck in the UK in a typical 9-to-5 job. As time went on I started my own firm, and since it has done well I consequently felt the urge to further my participation in cow protection. I feel strongly that in Sri Vrindavan mother cow should be honored and respected instead of exploited and abused. Last year, I asked Kurmarupa Suresh's donation built the first shed at Care for Cows to send me the names of all the cows who had no sponsor, and was given a list of 48. After some consideration, we decided to take on the responsibility of sending monthly donations to sponsor all of them. We are happy to have a herd of 48 cows and bulls in Vrindavan. The hardships the abandoned cows have been through are painful to hear about, and I am determined to do my part in making Vrindavan a place where the cow is protected and honored. All the residents at Care for Cows have names and they are treated like family members. During my subsequent visits to Vrindavan I feel my conviction deepening. I have spent hours in the Goshala brushing the cows, serving hands-on, and feeling great pleasure through this little service. I even got to participate in digging the samadhi for Rayu, one of the retired oxen I sponsored who passed away from old age. These memories and the monthly newsletters keep me in touch with Goseva and Sri Vrindavan. The protection of cows should be expanded until the suffering of mother cow is eradicated in Krishna's holy land. I hope to always be in a position to not only render but increase my service and feel much satisfaction in knowing that my contributions are being used in a way that pleases Lord Sri Krishna. Ina finds Kauranji's magic spot. Suresh brushes Janardana the Nilgai right. Suresh mourns the loss of Rayu 2 months early. Ganga delivers her calf. The calf was nicknamed Muchakunda as he slept most of the time. One morning before sunrise we noticed Ganga did not come to her designated spot to have her first meal of the day. She was pacing back and forth in front of the parked truck, lowering her head, looking underneath it. When she bellowed loudly, Nirmal curiously went to investigate why she was neglecting her breakfast. In the faint morning light he saw under the truck a small calf struggling to get up and realized that Ganga had calved prematurely. He pulled the small bull calf out from under the truck so Ganga could clean him up. His eyes were barely open and his hooves were soft and spongy like a rubber ball. His coat was intact but it was clear that he was undersized. Upon opening his mouth we could see his teeth had not yet protruded the gums. He was too weak to get up and when raised to a standing position, his legs were too wobbly to support him. Nirmal held him to Ganga's teat and though he took it in his mouth, he was too weak to nurse. He was clearly unprepared to withstand the demands of life. We carried him into one of the recovery pens with Ganga training behind, calling to him visibly worried. He laid flat with all 4 legs extended, breathing normally. We milked Ganga and put some of the colostrum in a baby bottle and managed to get the calf to drink some of it. Later Dr. Lavanya examined him and told us that he may be inactive for 10 days or so but there was every hope he would get stronger and survive. 3 times a day the cowherd men would feed him with a baby bottle and after 4 days he was strong enough to suckle and stand for a few minutes. Ganga would call to him and encourage him with constant licking but he would fall over and lie flat and fall asleep. Indeed, he slept about 20 hours a day. The weather was as harsh as it had been all year, windstorms, heavy rains followed by hot humid steam bath-like days. Though he was well sheltered on his 10th day he developed a constant fever that slowly consumed him. On his 12th day, though he fought the fever, he was strong enough to get up by himself and Nirmal helps the premature calf to nurse from his mother. He was more alert and would sit with Kiran the deer for a few minutes before trailing off to sleep. On his 15th day Dr. Lavanya saw him shivering and suspected that he had developed pneumonia. We began a course of medication and he showed improvement even though the fever persisted. On his 19th day, the fever broke and we were hopeful he would now progress faster. It looked promising but on the morning of his 20th day, he could not get up, nor could he stand while assisted, nor did he have the strength or interest to nurse. He laid flat and at midday breathed his last. Muchakunda at 12 days old holy car casualty. It was raining mercilessly when they unloaded the 2-year-old bull and brought him into the recovery ward. He was covered with sewer mud and barely conscious. He had a nasty gash on the left side of his head which made his mangled ear hang much lower than normal. His right front leg was broken at the shank. They had found him laying flat on the side of the road, another casualty of the holy cars speeding in the monsoon rain. But what to do when the windshield wipers are defeated? Easy, press your thumb on the horn, foot to the floor and cackle like a witch. After all, caution is for cowards, right? Fortunately, the bull was completely docile and of course easier to attend to. First we brushed the black mud off of his face and neck and then went to work on cleaning the gaping gash which spread about 4 inches wide and 5 inches long. About Onet heard of his ear had been. The bull is dazed from the head injury. The gash was about 4 by 5 inches in size, ripped off. The absence of necrotic tissue and maggots indicated it was a recent wound. We made a temporary splint from PVC pipe, lined it with cotton and tightly fastened it to his leg with gauze bandaging, thus immobilizing it. With the first aid finished, we propped him into a sitting position with a cushion and offered him a bowl of wheat straw with porridge. He ate slowly, appearing still dazed from the blow to his head. Dr. Lavania arrived shortly thereafter and decided to suture the wound. First he applied a local anesthetic around the perimeter of the gash and then carefully knitted the torn flesh back into place, 16 stitches in all. The operation took almost an hour, and to signal its success, the bull started waving his ear. The muscles still worked. He examined the fractured leg and made sure it was set properly and strengthened the cast with 2 bamboo slats. 9 days have passed and the bull can get up and walk around by himself. He is eating. Dr. Lavania examines the wound and begins to suture the gash, 16 stitches in all, well and in good spirits. His leg has begun to mend successfully and the stitches will soon be taken out of his wound. Owing to his gentle nature, he has been named Om Shanti and has turned out to be one of the best patients we have attended to. He understands that we are trying to help him and is fully cooperative, peaceful, well-mannered, grateful, and affectionate. Thanks to all concerned, it seems he is well on his way to recovery. Om Shanti stands after the treatment. He is one of the most cooperative patients we have treated. Nityaki Sarai came to us from Barsana more than 8 months ago. She had been grazing in a farmer's field who decided the best way to discourage her was to smash her hind shank with a solid bamboo staff. It worked. A Baba from Vrindavan noticed her sitting on the side of the road unable to walk and arranged to transport her to Care for Cows at his own expense. Her testimony can be read in the Care for Cows November 2007 newsletter. It took several weeks to remove the hidden bone fragments from her leg and gradually the open wound began to mend, but a considerable gap with no bone made her leg unable to bear weight. We kept her in a PVC cast, changing it every 3 or 4 days for 8 months. Gradually fibrous tissue began to join the fracture and she could bear some weight on it while walking. Recently one of the cowherd men mentioned that her udder was starting to swell, which is a sign that the cow may give birth within a week. We were all surprised as we had not allowed her to mate and her torso did not indicate that she was carrying a calf. Of course she could have arrived pregnant, but we were doubtful as she was not showing. Nityaki Sarai's ordeal. Nityaki Sarai's swelled udder. The calf stood up immediately. A few days later her udder became glossy and swelled further, making her completely uncomfortable. Dr. Lavania was out of station, so we called his senior student Dr. Dvivdi, who promptly arrived with an assistant. After a cursory examination they both doubted that Nityaki Sarai was pregnant and thought her udder was inflamed due to an infection. But after a thorough examination they announced that she was ready to give birth, but that her calf was not in the proper position. They induced the birth and after some struggle a full-sized calf emerged and promptly stood up and walked. Vijay massages her legs. Nityaki Sarai licks her calf affectionately. Nityaki Sarai was unable to get up to allow her calf to nurse, so we extracted a full bucket of colostrum and bottle-fed her and all the other calves as well. Though exhausted, Nityaki Sarai recovered quickly and within 2 days things got back to normal. We changed her cast and agreed that within a month she would be able to walk without it. Things were normal for another 10 days except for excessive rainfall. Then one evening she sat down in her pen and refused to eat. The next morning her breathing was shallow and despite much encouragement would not get up to let her calf nurse. Her temperature was normal, but she laid flat and breathed quickly until noon and left her body. Dr. Lavania told us that several Goshalas were reporting deaths due to a deadly virus called HS which arrests the respiratory system. He advised us that we get the herd vaccinated for HS as well as FMD, and we are in the process of doing that. It is possible that Muchakunda died of the same virus and his passing has put his mother Ganga in distress. Interestingly enough, Nityaki Sarai's calf naturally adopted Ganga as her surrogate mother and both of them are consoling each other. At 3 days old, thank you from the cows. May cows stay in front of me, may cows stay behind me, may cows stay on both sides of me. May I always reside in the midst of cows. Harry Bokhtavila 16.252. The cows send their heartfelt thanks to those who assisted during June 2008. Alessandra Petrassi Ananda Dasa Anil Kanagia Anonymous Ariel Telford Atmaram Dasa Bani Hamdi Kendramuka Dasi David Kazanau David Thornton Deborah Kleindivala Dasa Dina Sarana Dasa eka Gopi Dasi Gauranga Priya Dasi Gina Naidu Girish Sivakumar HHBB Madhava Maharaja HH Giriraj Swami Himwati Greenberg Hulya Erdam Jagannath Dasa J Samanjeen Pharaoh Kali Karan Babu Katyayani Dasi Krishnamai I Dasi Laxman Pujari Lilia Tonava Lisa Kubis Madhava Dasa Mahani Hai Swami Mariana Polinsky Punchatatva Dasa Radha Karan Dasa Radha Jivan Dasa Radha Mohan Savak Radha Patti Dasa Rivatai Devi Rohini Sudha Dasa Sasameda Dasi Samuel M. Walker Samath Kanta Dasi Sarah Needs Wiki Sarla Thakura Sharanapa Espai Radar Simona Pol Zupan Swan NGTV Gupta Thomas Wasni Varun Janeja Vishvambara Priya Dasi Vyasapada Dasa Vyasadev Kame Unitas